Whenever you work with other lawyers, there are going to be aspects to their skill set which are really amazing. As simple as it is, he just said, just look at the good things they do and just learn to copy those things, especially when you're starting out as a lawyer. And it's often popularized in TV series like Suits and things like this.
Do you think if it had gone the other way, like now being in that position where you would potentially hire someone from a panel firm?
Obviously, I can't say what a hypothetical person might have done in that scenario, but from my side, I would have obviously been happy to continue to work with them.
And like with that dynamic and that relationship, do you have that conversation through the agent, or did you just pick up the phone to the contacts within the business?
No, I spoke to them directly to the business itself, and actually as part of the interview process as well. Like at the beginning of the process, I kind of set out my stall of what was my ideal outcome, and also what would be an outcome that I thought could work for both of us if it didn't work out, if it didn't go in my favour.
All right, guys, I want to interrupt today's show with a quick word from our sponsor, Wordsmith. So most legal tools that I've seen in the market, they're built for law firms, but Wordsmith isn't. It's specifically built for in-house legal teams. So the general counsel, the legal ops function, the people that are basically keeping the rest of the business moving forward and running. So the idea with Wordsmith is that your team and your AI agents, they all work from the same connected picture of every single job, and they've got the context that they actually need to get it completed. Legal stops being the bottleneck and it starts being the thing that powers everything else about the business and drives things forward. It's built by former lawyers and technologists, and the Financial Times, Autoglass, BT are already using it, as well as a growing and never-ending roster of new clients. So if you want to find out a little bit more or signal an interest, then head on over to wordsmith.ai. There's a link in the notes below. Thank you.
Umar, welcome to Lessons I Learned in Law.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming and making the trip, or limping here with the ankle we're talking about.
Unfortunate timing, yeah.
But thanks for the effort. Good to have you. So we'll jump straight in. I'm really interested here because you were talking before we started recording, almost didn't become a lawyer and pursue the training contract offer that you had on the table. Tell us about that.
Yeah, no, that's right. So I had originally planned to go into shipping brokerage, which is a bit random, I appreciate, in Connecticut, and I had the meetings and was planning to move there. And then, unfortunately, my mother got cancer and she passed away whilst I was doing a master's at LSE. And that kind of changed my whole view about what I was going to do and where I was going to be. And so I sort of took stock, and it was a bit of a strange one because, as I was kind of mentioning to you earlier, my neighbours ended up adopting me at the time, which is not something that happens every day, and gave some great advice. And I'd had a training contract at Clifford Chance, which I had turned down because I was going to go and work in the States. And after my mother died, I kind of decided that actually I needed to be in London to be around my younger brother and sister, because they were very small at the time, and I didn't really think it was the right thing to do to leave the UK. So my adoptive family basically said to me, they were like, why don't you just call Clifford Chance up and say, I've changed my mind, my circumstances have changed, can I come back? And I said, nobody turns down Clifford Chance, then calls them up and then says, oh, by the way, I've changed my mind, and they take you back. And they said, well, what have you got to lose? So I thought about it, and I thought, actually, that's a fair point. So I called up CC and I said, look, my circumstances have changed, my mother died, I want to be in London to be near my siblings. Do you think you'd be willing to reopen the contract offer? And they said, let me take it away. We'll call you back tomorrow. And so the next day they called me back and they said, okay, we've got great news. We've looked at your file. We're very happy to take you back as a trainee. And we've managed to get you a place at law school in Oxford. And I said, right, that's great. The problem is I need to be in London. So if I'm going to be sent to law school outside of London, I'm going to have to turn you down again. And I think the woman probably thought I was slightly crazy at this point. And so to her credit, she said, let me just take it away one more time and I'll call you back. And the next day she called me back and said, look, Holborn was full, but we've managed to pull some strings and get you a place there. And we'd really love you to come back and do your training contract with us. So they told me I couldn't tell anyone. So I've waited 20 years or whatever to reveal this information.
What do they call it? It's a reveal.
Exclusive.
Exclusive. That's the one. Oh, perfect. Getting in early.
Yeah, I think all those people are probably left by now. But anyway, so it's probably fine. But no, they were really good about it. And yeah, I actually met my future wife at law school in Holborn. So it was a real sliding doors kind of moment. If I hadn't turned down the second time, I wouldn't have got married to my wife and had the kids that I have. And so it'd be a different life, I guess.
Stars aligned. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
What age are your kids?
So they're 16. They're doing the GCSEs at the moment. Okay. Actually today, in fact.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Is there a lot of?
They're twins. Yeah. So
right.
Yeah.
Has that been a stressful time?
No, well, it's been stressful for my wife and I in the sense that we're not sure that our kids are working hard enough, but they seem pretty relaxed. So
right.
Ask me in August. I
right.
guess,
yeah, how they got on. And that'll be the countdown to August. Cool. I guess it taught you to test boundaries early on in the legal career, and
if you don't ask, you don't
questions.
get. Yeah, I think that's there's often this reluctance, I guess, to, as you say, to test boundaries, and actually it's really important to be open to having conversations. I think actually the thing that really taught me was about honesty and integrity, and actually just talking with authenticity. And people tend to respond quite well to that. Obviously you can go in and you can make up a whole story as to why somebody should do something, but just being completely honest with them and just saying that these are the circumstances, this is what I would really like, and if you can't do it, that's okay. Went down really well, and it's something that I've kind of carried on with, I guess, throughout my career. Hopefully. Yeah,
perfect. So tell us a bit about where you are now. Then you're COO and General Counsel at DG Partners.
Yeah, so we're a systematic trading investment management business. We have around 40 staff based in London. We manage just over 2 billion in AUM. And our primary strategy is systematic trading, medium-term trend following, which basically involves lots of computer algorithms, tracking liquid financial markets and trying to predict trends that happen in them. So typically it's held in institutional portfolios by, for example, US pension plans and other institutional type investors. So yeah, really interesting work, and obviously I'm biased, but I think it's a great place to work.
Yeah. And how long have you been with the business?
Since 2012. So okay. I've actually been working with the business since 2010 because in the summer of 2010 I was in private practice at another firm, Travers Smith. So I worked at CC until 2008, and then I moved to Travers Smith, and I was there until 2012. And I was a funds lawyer at Travers. And in the summer of 2010, I got asked to work on this deal, which was a transaction involving this business to help build the systematic business.
Okay.
And so that was a very busy summer setting that up. And then we retained them as a client afterwards, and I'd worked with them for a while, and they were looking for a general counsel. And I got a call from a headhunter who said, I've got this great business. Right. Apparently they instruct your firm. They're looking for a GC. Would you be interested? And I was like, okay, they're my client. And so it was an interesting one, actually, because I was, on the one hand, I actually was keen to do it. But on the other hand, I was kind of the view that if I mess up this relationship by going for this interview, then I'll lose the client, which again is not, it's a terrible outcome, right? As a kind of senior associate in a law firm, and so I ended up taking exactly the same approach that I did when I spoke to CC, which was to go to them and say, well, look, I'd really like this role. I'm keen to interview with you guys, and obviously if you select me, that's great. But if you don't, I'd really like to keep working with you, and I don't want it to damage our relationship. And I think just that principle of honesty and integrity again. Went down really well, and they said, yeah, that makes sense, totally fine, come in, let's have a chat.
Right.
And the rest is history, I guess. So yeah, I joined them in 2012. So I've actually been there longer than I was in private practice now, which is kind of crazy. So, yeah.
And like with that dynamic and that relationship, did you have that conversation through the agent, or did you just pick up the phone to the contacts within the business?
No, I spoke to them directly, to to the business itself, and actually as part of the interview process as well. Like at the beginning of the process, I kind of set out my stall of what was my ideal outcome, and also what would be an outcome that I thought could work for both of us if it didn't work out, if it didn't go in my favour. Obviously, you know, you don't know. It depends. If somebody else had got that role, then they might have made a different decision about who they wanted to instruct. But I think being willing to even have the conversation and sort of not be, it's okay for people to say no, right? Basically, like it's okay, and you can still maintain a relationship with somebody, even if they tell you that they don't want to do something that you would like to do, but there are other things that you can work on together. So that was my view. So.
Yeah, it's something we hear on occasion, because a lot of the time when you're instructed by a client, the ideal candidate mapping, and you go through who their panel firms are, etc., then I think taking someone from that firm is a good solution. Do you think if it had gone the other way, like now being in that position where you would potentially hire someone from a panel firm, do you think it would impact if you worked with that individual if it didn't work out? Or
I mean, obviously I can't say what a hypothetical person might have done in that scenario, but from my side, I would have obviously been happy to continue to work with them. And yeah, I mean, I think that the culture of the business, the reason that I joined the business was because of the culture, to be honest. Yeah. It's a place where humility and excellence are things that are really valued. Without that arrogance and you know, there's lots of tropes, I guess, about like what it's like working in the finance world and how people are and so on and so forth. And I found it to be a very thoughtful, intelligent culture, and that was something that I liked. So I would like to think that if they hadn't hired me, they would have hired somebody else who was of a similar sort of ilk, and it would have been somebody that I could have got along with. So, but who knows? Yeah.
And when did you flag it to the partners at Travers?
So the good thing was, because they were a client, it was quite an easy sell. Yeah. Because from their point of view, so I went to the head of corporate and just said, you know, I've been invited to join these guys that we've been working with for quite a long time. It was quite funny actually, because the documents that we put together in the summer of 2010 were ridiculously complicated. And I remember before I got hired, obviously I had a conversation with the same head of corporate who had said to me, they'll always have us as a client. They'll always be a client of ours forever now going forward, because these documents are so complicated. Nobody else will understand them except us. So obviously, unless they hire one of us, which is the solution. So, but actually, we still work with Travers as well. So, so I have continued to work with them as well.
Okay. Well, thanks for sharing that. We'll jump into lesson one, if you could share that with me.
Yeah, sure. I guess, you know, so you asked me to put together kind of a list of 3 lessons in law. I think 3 is actually quite a small number, to be honest. You could probably talk for hours about lots of different things I've learned. But the first one that came to me was the idea that there's more to life than work, which sounds kind of counterintuitive actually, because, you know, obviously we'll probably talk about the fact that when you work in private practice and you work in a law firm, it's obviously super demanding and you have to work really hard and all that sort of stuff. That's all true, and I don't think it means that you can't still do those things, but I think it's more about not just focusing on one dimension in life. And a lot of the time, like I've seen a lot of lawyers who have ended up with a very kind of almost, you know, narrow view of like what life is, and they're kind of in this always work as the focus kind of a mindset, and the ability to actually switch off when you're not in that environment is, I think, really important. So the way that I always think about it is like, you know, when you're on your deathbed, you're not going to sit there thinking, thank God I drafted that paragraph at 3 a.m. and negotiated it with the other side on page 74 of the SPA. It's like, no one's going to care about that, right? But all the other aspects of your life, like, you know, family and friends and, you know, personal pursuits and things like that are important to you as well. Those are also important. My general view is to try and do everything with excellence, not just one thing with excellence. Like, it's no good being the best lawyer in the world, but then being terrible as a friend or a father or a husband or you know, partner or whatever it might be. So I guess it's more of a holistic approach. And I spent some time when I was younger thinking about some of the outcomes that people had who had finished their careers. And how they look back on it. You were just saying to me before this, hindsight is 2020, right? So there was a partner at another Magic Circle firm who was he had a really storied career, and he was sort of the doyen of the city at the time. And he gave an interview, and I remember reading it, and they asked him, what regrets do you have, or what would you have done differently? And he said, basically, like, I'm really successful, I've made loads of money, I'm well known, blah blah blah, I've got a fantastic reputation, but I haven't spent any time with my kids. They've ended up, one of them I think had ended up addicted to substances. And he said, if I had my time again, I would have gone back and I would have changed all that, and I would have given more time to my family and more focus on them. And I guess it's that thing of trying to find balance, really.
Yeah. It's I think it's super important. How much of that do you feel, like the story you shared earlier and your decision to pursue law as a career and your mother passing, do you think that has had an impact and shaped that view?
Yeah, definitely, for sure. I think it's a weird thing, because that whole episode, I guess, kind of made me who I am. Like, as in, it shaped my personality. It had a massive impact on me from a sort of resilience perspective as well, which I think is one of the most important things you need nowadays to be successful as a lawyer. So it's a strange thing. I've spent a lot of time thinking about it. It's a strange thing when you think about it, like these things that you don't want to happen in your life, they also kind of make you who you are, and so you wouldn't be who you are if you hadn't been through them. But yeah, it's definitely, it's had an impact on sort of the things that I think are important and the things that I value. So again, you'd probably have to get my kids on to ask them if I'm living up to it. But
you're present there, but it ebbs and flows, doesn't it? And
yeah.
sometimes you feel, I'm definitely the same, where like one's in the black and one feels a little bit in the red, and you sort of neglected friendships or fitness or whatever, and
exactly,
or work as well from time to time. It's striking a balance which works for you, and different chapters, I think, of your life as well. It doesn't always stay consistent.
I think that's absolutely right. Like, you're never going to get it perfect all of the time. It's more about some sort of level of self-awareness about when things are kind of going too far one way or too far the other, and then self-correcting, I guess.
And I find as a dad of young kids now, where it's like in the moment can almost sweat that a little bit too much and overthink it, or feel like you're neglecting parts of the week to week or day to day. But the bigger picture is probably different. So taking time to measure that on a yearly basis more so, I find helpful. And it's switching off outside of work. How we, again, pre-recording, but like your sporting pursuits, how important is that?
For me, sports is one of the kind of key things to achieving that, I guess. So as I was talking about, I practice full contact karate, which I recognise is not necessarily for everybody.
Right.
But
is that, for context, is that Karate Kid karate? Is that what you see in?
It's quite different
movie?
to that. I think karate that you see on TV is obviously quite showy and sort of it's more kind of dramatic in that sense. Whereas full contact karate is literally you and one other person, and you're just trying to knock the other person out basically all the time. So it's I mean, my favourite thing is when this is going to sound really awful, but my favourite thing is when you've got your white gi and then it's covered in blood, and someone says, "Oh, you're covered in blood," and you say, "Don't worry, it's not mine. It's fine. Let's go." It can get quite brutal. But the thing about it that's really good is that it's you have to be 100% present in the moment, and you can't be not focused, because you will get hurt basically. And it's also very much about trying to work out how to break down somebody else, and how to counter all the things that they're doing, and how to there's a lot of strategic thought and planning in it as well. So it's a bit like playing chess in 3 dimensions. Right. So you're trying to work out what they're going to do. You're looking at the way they're breathing. You're looking at the movements that they have to try and work out where the openings are. Okay. And it's a really it's really technical, actually. It's very technical. Yeah.
So what are what's the timings, and is it rounds? How does that work?
Yeah, so I don't compete in tournaments, because I made a conscious decision that it wouldn't be a good look to turn up with my jaw wired shut in a investor meeting. So I try and stay in more controlled environments generally, but we have full contact sparring a couple of times a week, and typically the classes tend to be a mixture of high intensity interval training, body weight type training, and then fighting as well. And the fighting can be anything from sort of 30 minutes to 45 minutes, multiple rounds. Typically you fight for maybe a minute and then move to the next person. And usually, so the dojo is usually quite full with maybe 40 to 50 people in it, and you would just literally turn around and fight the next person that's in the row. So you just keep fighting, and it's amazing actually. Yeah, if you say to somebody stand there and shadow box or shadow fight for 4 minutes, full strength, it's quite tiring. So if you times that by multiple people that you're fighting and do it over a long period of time, you need a really good degree of fitness basically to be able to do it. So it's brilliant. Yeah, I mean I recommend martial arts generally to everybody, because I think it's a really good way of getting discipline, control, and presence in the moment as well. Yeah, but not necessarily coaching at anything.
Yeah, no, sounds good. I had nothing in comparison to that. I had a white collar boxing fight when I lived in Australia. I love boxing, the fitness and the discipline as well. And
boxing's amazing as well.
Similar. I've just got back into it recently, but and a bit of sparring is good. So do you wear headgear, or is there any?
No. So you wear gloves and shin pads. Okay. Just to kind of minimise injury risk. Yeah. But apart from that. But when you fight in competition, like at the top level, you don't wear anything. It's just completely.
Wow, intense.
Yeah.
Nice. All right.
For anyone that's new to the show, this podcast is brought to you by Heriot Brown, and we're a specialist legal recruiter working with top legal teams throughout the world. Every week, we speak to hundreds of lawyers thinking about their careers, what that might look like in-house, and we also talk to companies that are looking to build legal teams from top talent. And this podcast is really just an extension of those conversations. So if you're curious about the market or building a legal team yourself, or what your next move might look like, then feel free to reach out to us. Our details are in the show notes. Thank you.
We'll move on to lesson 2.
Yeah. So lesson number 2, I guess this is kind of a more simple lesson, but it was actually advice that was given to me by the first partner that I worked with at Clifford Chance, who's a guy called Mike Edwards, who was a bit of a Renaissance man he kind of was happy to do anything and everything. So he was a commercial real estate partner. But we ended up one time in the Court of Appeal fighting a litigation case, and the litigation department found out about it and were like, "What are you guys doing?" It was like, "Oh, it's all just law. It's fine. Don't worry about it." So I think he used to stress some people out with his approach, but he was a fantastic mentor at the beginning of my career, and I really enjoyed working with him. So his advice was basically that whenever you work with other lawyers, there are going to be aspects to their skill set which are really amazing, and they're going to be things that they do which are not very good at all. And as simple as it is, he just said, just look at the good things they do and just learn to copy those things and leave all the bad stuff behind, and that way you'll become a really good lawyer. And it's great advice. It's advice that I still give to trainees that I've trained as well, because it's very easy to implement.
Okay. And have you ever felt like you've picked up, or you've caught yourself doing some of the bad habits?
I hope not, but I've definitely learned from good habits, which actually this kind of can bring on to lesson number 3, I suppose. So lesson number 3 was around this idea that especially when you're starting out as a lawyer, and it's often popularized in TV series like Suits and things like this as well, right? Which is a great show, obviously, but not necessarily that realistic, especially the time frames. And this idea that you always have to win, and that winning looks like a binary game where you kind of destroy the other person or win the negotiation on every point, or as many points as possible, or you walk away happy, they walk away sad, etc. And in real life, that's not a sustainable way to do business, right? So like if you want to do business with people, you want to keep coming back to do more together, and you're only going to do that if you're both equally unhappy with the deal that you did.
Right.
And so one of the things that I learned actually from somebody that I worked with quite closely was to temper that natural inclination, I guess, that you have as a young lawyer to kind of just always win, right? And instead to look at a much bigger picture of how do we build relationships? How do we actually do business together over the longer term?
Right.
How do we both become successful, not just me being able to proclaim success today and you feeling like you've been done over, basically.
Right, yeah. There's an analogy there with sparring versus competitive?
It's kind of the opposite, yeah.
Yeah, sparring to help the other person along a little bit.
Yeah.
And in terms of like the team.
Oh, actually, I was actually sorry to interrupt, but on that though, interestingly, when you're sparring, there's a big. So even though it's very much an individual sport, there's a massive thing that we have in our dojo anyway around the team. And so, as I mentioned, like we have fighters who are fighting at the nationals or at the World Cup in Spain in a couple of weeks' time.
Cool.
And one of the things that we were talking about was how the reason they've got to that level is because they train with the team. And so for example, like actually the safest place to learn to spar in karate is with somebody who's way more experienced than you and way more senior. So if I'm sparring with somebody who's like a white belt or a red belt, I'm not going to be trying to hit them or hurt them. I'm actually going to spend most of the time letting them hit me, and I'm going to tell them all the things that they're going to do wrong. And that's a very similar point of like this idea of being able to kind of work together and both progress rather than just one of you progressing.
How does that work in the trading environment where you're negotiating sort of proprietary trading and that piece? How does it? How do you strike that balance?
Yeah, so I guess there's two aspects. There's like the inner aspect, so like the internal within the firm. So obviously, my responsibility relates to all the non-investment matters within the business. So managing people, for example. So I always say to people, we've got 40 people, as I said, in the business. Not everyone's going to stay forever, and that's just the real world, right? So I always take the view that hopefully everyone who's good stays forever, and that's great. But equally, the main goal for somebody should be that for whatever time they're with me or with us as a business, they should improve who they are in every aspect, like whether it's technical, like from their personal perspective, like interactions with other people, etc. And if they leave better than they were when they came in, then I think that's a result, and it's good for them and it's good for us, and obviously we all benefit from that. And then on the outside, the interactions with clients. So we obviously have lots of clients that we work with who we manage assets for. It's about coming to resolutions that are fair. So obviously they have certain goals that they want to achieve in terms of the terms that they're negotiating with us. And we obviously have certain things that we're trying to achieve in terms of what we're trying to get from the relationship as well. And instead of seeing it as just, can we get the most juice out of the lemon from them or vice versa, them doing it the other way around, we always try to have this collaborative relationship where we want them to be successful, we want to protect their assets, we want them to do really well, and we want to work together for a long period of time. We want to build relationships that last for decades, ideally.
Right.
And so it's really important to, again, kind of emphasize that continuing sustainable nature of relationship. And I think that's where the kind of integrity and looking for the best outcome for everybody is the important piece.
Yeah. And your title on LinkedIn and it's partner, COO and General Counsel in that order. Like really interesting. Always someone that's in or has a different hats. How do you wear those hats and balance the role?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think it's a question, funny enough, sometimes I get asked in due diligence meetings as well by investors. The simple answer to that is, historically, when you look at people who were sitting, I guess, in the C-suite in those types of roles, they typically had an accounting or a finance type background. And over time, I think that's shifted, particularly in finance, because of the complexity of regulation and law and the intersection with all these rules and managing a business. And it's very difficult now to actually run any kind of business in the financial services space without having C-suite level input from somebody who's actually got these ideas embedded in their mindset and their psyche. And it's something that at a board level should be in all businesses now really valued. So I guess the simple answer is that actually it's all kind of integrated. It's not like sometimes I'm GC, sometimes I'm COO, sometimes I'm Chief Compliance Officer. It's actually more, I look at all as one kind of one piece really, rather than multiple parts.
Okay. And how did that come around for you?
Becoming Chief Operating Officer. So my predecessor and I spent time working together when I was GC with conversations around what it would look like to take over from him when he retired, and to be in that role.
And they were standalone sort of COO?
Yeah, so when I joined, I was General Counsel and he was Chief Operating Officer, and we had a number of conversations about it. So he actually used to do risk management as well, and that's not something that was within my background particularly. So I was kind of honest again and just said, I don't think that the risk piece is something that I would be best suited to, and that actually that piece would have to go somewhere else, and that was agreed into somebody else as the Chief Risk Officer now, who's eminently more qualified than me to do that. But from an operational management perspective, obviously that dovetailed very nicely with the GC skill set. So yeah, I actually did learn from him again, like going back to the lesson of kind of taking things from other people. He was somebody who was quite different, very different in style to me, and really listened a lot to people and kind of what their needs were. And so that was I thought that was a really good quality actually, and it was something that I tried to pick up and try to implement. So I always say to people, like, I won't necessarily agree with what you'll say, but I will listen to anything you have to say, and I value your honesty. And you can say anything to me, but just don't necessarily expect me to always say yes. Good idea.
Yeah, fair.
That's kind of how I approach it. Yeah.
Good approach to take, I think. And for someone that, going back to having not initially, you were looking at the shipping brokerage, and then have moved into something where you're wearing those two hats, and it's did you view yourself as you've moved away or you're sort of business person first beyond general counsel?
I think that's again a really interesting question. I think what's interesting when you're in private practice is that you feel like you're working on a big deal, because it's obviously like, it's these big numbers and it's complicated and all this kind of stuff, and late nights and blah blah blah. But really, when you do that deal, it is just one part of a journey. Yeah. And actually, I think a lot of the time, I keep to I statements. When I was working in private practice, I thought like that at the time. But actually, that's usually just kind of a jumping off point to something else. Or it may even be that actually loads of stuff has gone on. Usually, loads of stuff has gone on in the background before you even get there, where the relationship building part happened. Then you get the documents done, and then afterwards, obviously, the business has to walk off and actually go and survive and do whatever it's doing. And I think as lawyers in private practice, it's very easy to forget that. I would definitely say that anybody who's in private practice, even if they plan to stay there forever, it's a really good idea to go and work on secondment in a business and understand that it's just a completely different way of looking at things, and it's not just that one thing that gets done. That's like a very small part of it. A lot of the time people don't actually read any documents until in most businesses until things go wrong, right? Or until they need to change something. So I think you can sort of mislead yourself a little bit as to the importance of those aspects, and it can be quite a narrow way of looking at things.
Yeah. And that is, had you done a secondment when you were in?
Yeah, I went on secondment at JP Morgan actually. So I was a litigator when I started out, and I went and worked in the litigation team, and it was really eye-opening. It was really interesting, especially because there's nowhere to hide as well. Right. So obviously, like if you're in private practice and you get an email and it's something really complicated, you can be like, okay, I'll come back to you with an answer on that. But obviously, when you're inside a business, somebody comes and stands next to you and goes, "What do I do about this?" It's like you can't send them an email and say, "I'll come back to you in 3 days' time." It doesn't work like that. So. It was really eye-opening, a really interesting experience. Worked with some great people there, and funnily enough, the business that I work in now actually span out of JP Morgan in 2002. So again, a lot of the sort of cultural fit was kind of still part of the same thing. But there's also this thing in-house where you're constantly having to juggle loads and loads of things, and it's about prioritizing and reprioritizing, and like the list is kind of constantly like moving up and down. It's never fixed. Whereas I think in private practice, you can have, depending on the team, obviously depends what you're working on, but you can have sort of a few things that you're working on, maybe 2 or 3 things that you can focus on, get them done, and then move on to the next thing, and you have these sort of peaks and troughs. Whereas with when you're working in industry, it's kind of just like constant, like all the time. So it's quite a different way of doing things. And
did being at like a place like JP Morgan, size of that business, did it, and legal function, did that tell you anything about what you wanted as a move in-house? Because quite a different opportunity, I guess, presented itself in a smaller entity team.
Not so much, but it was good. Not in terms of like what I wanted to do specifically. So I actually, as I said, I started out as a litigator, but it was finance, corporate, and regulatory, and I spent a lot of time working on some really complex cross-border litigation, which went on for years, and we were successful in that litigation and won like the British Legal Awards in 2008, I think it was, for litigation for that case, which became like a really key case in terms of investor protections and pre-MiFID, like how courts would look at whether investors were, knew what they were doing basically when they entered into complex contracts. The thing that I realised was that as a litigator, you don't necessarily know what kind of work is going to come in through the door next.
Okay.
So you could end up doing something with structured products and complex cross-border stuff like that, or you could end up doing some large bank investigation, managing, 200 paralegals and doing document review. And so I sort of looked at it and took a view and thought, actually, the stuff working on that case and obviously working for JP Morgan at the time, the things that I was actually interested in were the more abstract things, which is not for everyone. So my wife's a lawyer as well, and she thinks it's really boring, but that stuff of the more sort of esoteric and intangible kind of stuff, I find it really interesting because I find it quite thought-provoking. And so I decided that actually the only way to do that was to go and work in investment funds, because it was something where you'd consistently get a diet of that type of work. And so it all played a part in kind of my decision making, and that was why I joined the funds team at Travers in the end, because I wanted to work in that space. So and obviously that's where I've ended up. So yeah, it helped me kind of form my views. I think there's this thing when you start out as a lawyer, particularly in large firms, that you're kind of made to believe like you can only do one thing and then you're going to stay there, with the exception of Mike, who I mentioned earlier. You're kind of made to feel that you're going to do one thing, you're going to do that one thing well, and that's it. And obviously that's really good for the law firm business model, but it doesn't necessarily allow for the space for you as an individual to develop and work out what you actually want to be, or what, how you want to change your career in the future. And the funny thing was, when I left litigation to go and work in funds, one of the really senior partners in the litigation team took me aside and said, I used to be a shipping lawyer. Said, everybody does it, don't worry. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. So yeah, I think there's, if you, I think adaptability and believing that you have transferable skills, and that actually if there's something you're really interested in, it's a good idea to pursue it. Rather than sitting there and just doing something you're not super keen on.
Yeah, good advice. Because I think you're good at what you enjoy, and you enjoy what you're good at.
Yeah, exactly. But I think you also you enjoy things more the more you do them, and the better you get at them as well. You know, there's like that saying from sports of the harder I train, the luckier I get, right? Which is that thing. So you just get better over time, and actually it becomes more enjoyable when you're better at something, obviously, than when you're not so good at something, right? It's just kind of intuitively true.
For sure.
So yeah.
Okay.
Many companies and legal teams assume that top lawyers will just want to drop their pens or their contracts and join their fantastic legal team. And if you're working internally within an amazingly interesting environment in a business that you find as a challenge and is fulfilling your career, then that's that. Why not? But in reality, top candidates are more interested in a company or a legal function's reputation, its visibility in the market, and what they know about the culture of that team. At Heriot Brown In-House Legal Recruitment, we're currently offering an assessment, a visibility gap assessment, to analyse your legal team's employer brand in the market, how it's perceived, and share that data and analysis with you. So if you're interested in finding out more, book a discovery call in the link below in the show notes, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Right, so we're gonna jump into our segment, which is hot or not. I'm going to throw a phrase at you, or a statement, and if you decide whether you think it's in or out for legal.
Okay.
So start with litigators make the best in-house lawyers.
I'd be super biased, wouldn't I, if I say it either way. I think that good in-house lawyers can come from any background. I don't think they have to be a litigator.
Okay.
I do think that being a litigator has served me, as in starting out as a litigator, has served me really well in some respects, in the sense of not being phased or afraid of certain things, and not worrying about things that you've seen like all the way through. So obviously, like having actually gone all the way through trials and court and disputes and so on and so forth, maybe you have those things hold less fear than they might do for somebody who's never done any of that stuff. But I don't think you need to be a litigator by background to be a good lawyer in-house or in private practice. I mean, some of the best lawyers I know were not litigators. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Your wife, is she litigation back? Is she what?
No, she's a corporate commercial lawyer. Yeah.
Okay.
So she's very different to me. Yeah. Very different.
Well, great. Then lawyers have to go through the hard graft of that 3 a.m. working culture to earn their stripes.
It seems to be less the case now than it was when I was starting out. So, like I think I was saying to you before, I remember sleeping on the floor, working till 1 a.m, all that kind of stuff at Clifford Chance. I don't regret that period. Like I feel like I learned a lot really fast. There's definitely been a sea change. I remember having a trainee at the other firm that I worked at where it was 5 p.m. one time and she got up and put her bag over her shoulder and went to walk out the door, and she was a trainee working in my team and I was a senior associate, and I was like, what are you doing? Where are you going? She said, I've got a swimming lesson. And she walked out the door and I sat there and I was like, what the hell? And then I thought about it and I was like, wait, maybe I'm wrong. So I think there's been a change. I think COVID and the pandemic has also changed the dynamic of how people work, and the sort of the work from home, work-life balance, all that kind of stuff has been taken into account a lot more. I think that's a good thing, to be honest. I think it was probably too far one way, but there is also something you lose, like the speed of learning, the kind of the intensity of learning that you get from being in those situations is gone. So I mean, like, I'm happy with the way that I did it. But you probably have to ask somebody who didn't do that what they think.
I think there has been definitely seen a sea change, and it's I think across all industries, not necessarily restricted.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I think overall is probably, like you say, a good thing in balance. But I think to your lesson around taking the good and the bad, it probably denies part of that learning by osmosis, the remote working culture and pieces that go with it.
Yeah, I think so. We, like, post-pandemic, we looked at this quite a lot, and we decided in our business that we would be hybrid, 3 days in the office. And the thinking behind that was that it's cool, like, to have the benefits of having some flexibility and being able to have a bit more balance in your life. But there is definitely this need to have this kind of interaction within a business environment, within an office environment, where you're learning from other people and you develop from just hearing people, right? The way they interact, even sitting next to somebody making a phone call or being in a meeting or those sorts of things. I think it's very hard to replicate that in a purely remote environment. And we saw that kind of in the pandemic. It was difficult for people to cope with that.
And then finally, celebrity endorsements of legal products.
Legal products.
Have you seen the adverts recently for some of the tech providers?
Jude Law, right? Yeah. I did see that, and I was like, what on earth is he doing?
And Suits as well. Your reference to Suits,
right? Yeah. I just think that's gimmicky, to be honest. I think that wouldn't make me buy anything. I don't really care about that at all. I think it's a bit irrelevant.
But I'm sure.
Much more interested in somebody who actually knows what they're talking about, saying something is good and that they actually use it. And there are lots of good legal products out there, or good products that you can use, in the AI space, for example. But Jude Law advertising, it wouldn't make me buy it. So,
I've seen him on the Deliveroo. I think he's on Deliveroo Uber Eats as well. I'm like, geez, they need another good rom-com written for Jude.
Focused around legal products, it would be better. I don't think they get many viewers.
Maybe not. Fair. And how is AI impacting your world?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that we're constantly adding more of to our business. So we're fundamentally, so we have a macro trading business and a systematic trading business, and they're both important parts of our business. The systematic trading business is heavily technology based, obviously. I think the important thing for us is our philosophy around technology generally is that we believe in the value of humans and the importance of human oversight. So we don't kind of let things just run away with themselves and try and fix problems afterwards. We think it's important, even if you don't do anything, even if you're not really intervening at all. Our goal should be to make sure that things work properly and they do the things they're supposed to do. So I think looking at AI in the similar sort of vein is very consistent with that philosophy, and we look at it as something that can enhance productivity and something that can really help people to do more things better. But you have to have a critical eye when you look at it. And so the conversation that we've been having a lot internally, which, talking to other organizations, it doesn't seem like it's a super common thing to talk about this, but I think it's really important, is the culture around AI, not just the adoption of AI, but how you actually think about its adoption from a people perspective. And it's definitely the case that for more senior people who are more experienced, you can look at AI as something that you manage as if you had somebody else working for you and you're critical of their output. Whereas for some people who are less experienced and haven't got experience of managing other people, I think the thing you really want to avoid is the degradation of critical thinking. If they get to a place where they just think, oh, I can just do this with AI and I don't need to think about this piece, whatever it is, whether it's coding or drafting or, something else, I think that leaves you in a very vulnerable place where the quality of work will go down and also the quality of thinking and development in people will go down too. So, I think it needs careful management and it definitely needs thought. And not just wholesale rollout without anything. It is amazing though. I mean, I've been using it recently for drafting complex agreements, and so I will draft something and then I will run that through, whatever the AI. I won't promote anything, but whatever the AI is that we're using, and then ask it for feedback on it and use it as like an interactive drafting tool. I think for that it's brilliant because you're thinking the whole time, right? Yeah. And it'd be like sitting with another lawyer and saying, "Oh, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that?" So it's definitely useful, and from a coding perspective, we've estimated that it can increase productivity by 2 to 4 times. So it's super useful, and it definitely needs to be part of every business now, I think. Yeah,
it's unbelievable for research and just information at your fingertips.
Definitely,
I think it's it removes the excuse of. I think it removes the excuse of I don't know the answer, or I can't form a view on something, like I don't have enough information, because it shouldn't take long to be able to get the facts, I think, and a bit of information.
Definitely, yeah, and also like building, certainly in the development world as well, like building prototypes of things too. I mean, we built something recently as an example that would have probably taken a month of development time, and we did it in 2 days. That still needs a lot of work behind it to kind of make it all lined up properly at the back end. But even just that speed of bringing things to fruition is really helpful, because then it leaves you with more time to think and more time to kind of plan how you're going to do stuff. So yeah, I mean, I think it's something everybody's going to have to use, but how you use it is an important question.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, thank you for sharing those lessons. It's been great to chat, and I know you're nominated for the General Counsel of the Year award at the Lawyer, which is coming up. So I wish you best of luck with.
Thank you so much.
That, and on the endeavours for the year.
Thank you.
Really, thank you for your time. It's been great chatting.
Thank you. Yeah, lovely to meet you. Thank you so much.
Nice to chat. Cool.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Lessons I Learned in Law. If you've enjoyed listening to this podcast, or you've taken something from any of the insights shared by today's guest, then please give the show a follow or a subscribe on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And please head over to the Lessons I Learned in Law LinkedIn page and give us a follow. It really does help the podcast travel and get out to the wider legal community and can help shape someone's legal career. Thank you.